writing too long. I would write very long poems. As you can see, I'm very attracted to longer poems, as demonstrated by the poem that I presented today. So I was telling my class that she called it, she was very kind about it. She said it's an embarrassment of riches. There's an embarrassment of riches in the poems. And she guided me toward the sonnet as a more enclosed form. She said, Tina, you have to practice within the cage of the form, and then you'll understand what I mean. So I thought, why don't I practice even more with a smaller cage, which is the haiku? She didn't seem to value the haiku as much, and I couldn't quite understand it because I see that David took this poem from The Essential Haiku, edited by Robert Hass, which I just really wanted to stress that if you haven't gone to this book, you really have to, because I think that David brought up so many different points about the haiku, and then also something that I realized too about the radishes and the pointing of the radish is that the haiku always seems simple, but it is not. And that's the beauty of haiku. There is this very famous saying, an egg with horses in it. What is an egg with horses in it? It's this idea of if you could imagine, a very, very small container for something, yet the horses raging inside the egg cause so much to happen within the small amount of space. And I must say that the haiku is a form that impacted me deeply because there are also other aspects of the haiku that are so important. And I think David mentioned two poems in which you could see the movement of such things, which is the movement of seasons. So within the radishes and the earth, you could see the seasons, and then also the other wonderful haiku that he mentioned, forgive me if I'm misquoting, year after year on the monkey's face is the monkey's face, is that right? Is a monkey's face, and so it's the repetition of year after year that there go the seasons again. And it's the idea of the largeness of the seasons packed into the smallness of the three-line form. And some of them, I noticed that this wasn't the syllabic count, but also that's the beauty of the haikus, that you can deter from the syllabic count and still have it be a haiku. But I've always, I loved it. I love that David presented the haiku because it is worlds contained inside a very, very small form. So I just wanted to encourage everybody to read that anthology. Thank you.
Great. I think we have one right.
And the Muslim poet sent me a poem someone made based on words in the inauguration that had never been said before. Do y'all know about this?
Yes.
You saw that?
The words that weren't ever used before.
Were used to make a poem?
Yes.
Oh, okay, so maybe I don't need to read it.
No, read it.
See, I never know what I'm behind on. Anyway, so somewhat, the idea is, of course, of trying to still find some way to make something out of nothing, which is what that inauguration was. Rusted, subsidized, urban Islamic lady, solidarity in depletion. I trapped sad trillions, stealing carnage to flush away despair, to flush away disrepair. An unrealized infrastructure, I bleed tombstones, a windswept, stolen landscape, my sprawl unstoppable. So those are Trump's words, and I don't even know who made it. Someone just said, this is what someone made from the words.
Beautiful.
Okay, let's see if I can pull it up again. What I need to do is figure out who did it. Rusted, subsidized, urban Islamic lady, solidarity in depletion. I trapped sad trillions, stealing carnage to flush away disrepair. An unrealized infrastructure, I bleed tombstones, a windswept, stolen landscape, my sprawl unstoppable. So yeah, I mean, that's the idea of what can we do, what can we make out of the despair here.
And what I'd like us to do also is listen. I don't think we listened enough to a whole huge number of men and women who felt completely ignored. And we were indifferent to things that were happening and that were hurting a lot of people and families. So let's not do us and them, let's do Let's try to listen to everybody. And although I'm very much on a very extreme side of one side, I'm going to try to learn to listen to the other side and maybe make friends and maybe make poems with them and maybe have the center come back together like a heart in the middle of all this disrepair. So.
Yes, Miles.
Hi, everybody. I've been looking for poems to offer some wisdom, to maybe suggest a role for poetry in this time of uncertainty. And I found this poem by Adrienne Rich, which was published in Poetry, August 1957. A mark of resistance. Stone by stone, I pile this cairn of my intention with the noon's weight on my back, exposed and vulnerable across the slanting fields, which I love but cannot save from floods that are to come, can only fasten down with this work of my hands these painfully assembled stones in the shape of nothing that has ever existed before. A pile of stones, an assertion that this piece of country matters for large and simple reasons, a mark of resistance, a sign.
Audience heard this yesterday. It was Jane Hirschfield's poem, Let Them Not Say. Let's just read it together because it came out yesterday during the inauguration. Let them not say, let them not say, we did not see it, we saw. Let them not say, we did not hear it, we heard. Let them not say, they did not taste it, we ate, we trembled. Let them not say, it was not spoken, not written. We spoke, we witnessed with voices and hands. Let them not say, they did nothing. We did not enough. Let them say, as they must say something, a kerosene beauty, it burned. Let them say, we warmed ourselves by it, read by its light, praised, and it burned.
I think we watched each other find a form that spoke to us in our class. And it was really cool to watch each other go, ooh, that pulls things out of me. And I would like to know, for each one of you, if there's a form that has ever done that for you in your career as a poet.
Great question. Sure, Laura.
Oh, it's the sign for me, obviously. I mean, it's always been the sign, even going back to someone like Aiden and thinking about where it shows up or what its DNA is. So I just sort of never get tired of that little box.
I like short poems, triolets, rondos, rondelays, and I find that the first examples of them were always lighthearted, but I find that I've been able to use them for very intense material. I kind of refer to them privately as little packets of intensity, and that there's all this force that's coming through this little portal, and that if you have 8 lines or 6 lines or even 4 lines, and most of them are repeating, that obsession has to grow and grow and grow as the poem progresses and take on some heat, and the challenge is how do you do that? So I'm drawn to the small poems, the small form poems, and make up form poems too. I like to make them up and then bust them. I like to see if I can bust out of them.
For me, it's the Pantoum. The Pantoum is a poem that has a lot of repeated lines in a very specific place. And the more the lines are repeated, the meaning has to be enlarged or changed or revealed. And it's, for me, the obsessive trying to find a way to connect things of the pantoum, and then the release of the last line of the pantoum, which is always the first line repeated at the end. I love that form, and it has taught me a lot. And like Martha, I have written probably 50 pantoums, and there's only one pantoum left that was published. They're all I then explode them and write poems that are not in that form anymore. I use that as a guide, as a vessel.
I used to be terrible at line breaks and understanding what a line was. And I read a whole bunch of Milton and a whole bunch of Browning in my late 20s, probably early 30s. And so blank verse, which is unrhymed iambic pentameter, helped me understand it helped me to write narrative poems in a way that changed what I was writing from, just sort of stories broken up into lines into something that had some kind of spine or format or skeleton to it. And it doesn't mean I write blank verse ever, really, but it helped me to understand the line as a unit. I would say it was important to me. I don't write in received forms hardly ever. Sometimes I try to cheat and I have like 14 lines or like stanzas of 14 lines, and I hope people give me extra credit for that.
I'll try that one too. The form that I am constantly in pursuit of is the sentence. That's the interesting form to me.
It's in the
The
sentence.
sentence. And I will count syllables or not count syllables or arrange accents or think about turns and repetition and rhyme in all number of ways, in all kinds of forms that I can take apart and put back together and hybridize, as Tina talked about so well the other day. But always the sentence. That's the enchantment. And then, like Daisy said, arranging some wonderful, sinuous relationship between that sentence and those lines, whatever the form.
I agree with David about the sentence part for sure. And I don't know, I also don't write in received forms, but I'm interested, I feel as if I came to poetry first through Greek tragedy. I studied Greek and Latin, not English, not poetry. But Greek tragedy is poetry, and it has a variety of forms within it, especially the choruses that have strophes and antistrophes. So that led me to think about, I guess, muscularity and the pendulum movement of thought that happens from stanza to stanza, and then learning from people like Cicero and Thucydides how the sentence itself can work that way and can have a slow, modulated pace and be a way to manipulate reader expectation. So that's both the level of the sentence, but then rhythm that comes from choruses. That'd be my answer.
Yeah, I don't write in received forms either, and I think that the earliest form that I adored was the form that just smashed through the pentameter in Whitman and Allen Ginsberg. And this was the 60s and 70s, and it seemed a perfect match for the times, and it seemed a roadmap for the times. So I like the form that destroyed the form. In my own writing, I often will break, and I've talked about this in my workshop, so sorry workshop. I will often use a couplet to sort of almost cauterize lines, singe them by slicing them apart and and slowing everything down. But then I'll often abandon all that afterwards.
I love all the forms. I just was thinking that maybe a very instructive thing to talk about is a book that has always been really helpful to me called The Handbook of Poetic Forms, which is published by Teachers and Writers Collaborative. And I actually think it's really helpful to practice all of the forms. All of them, to have practiced once in your life with Hem Tum, to have practiced one and had a maddening experience with the Safina, to understand the roots of the ghazal and where it comes from. My great teacher was the Agha Shahid Ali, who really popularized that form in this country. So I have a tremendous amount of respect for the ghazal and its incantation, to understand rhythm and incantation through adopting a form. I like the idea of adopting a form for a little while, like a month, adopting a form, poem of the month for yourself, and really trying to get a grasp on it. And again, understanding that sense of the cage, of how to operate inside the cage of poetry. I have clearly loved them all because I'm the person that's teaching the class on the form and giving the talk on the hybrid form. So I love to see where we're coming from in order to see where the language is going. And in order to break free in the sense of free verse, I think we have to understand what we're breaking free from. So I think all of that is incredibly important.
What's the name of the person with the ghazal? Your
Agha
teacher?
Shahid Ali,
I'm
A-L-I.
sorry?
Agha, A-G-H-A, Shahid, S-H-A.
ID.
H-I-D, yeah,
Thank you.
Ali, A-L-I. He also has an anthology too, as well.
Great. Do we have another one? Or there? Looks like, yes.
For Martha, or anybody wants to respond. I was thinking of the work of William Carlos Williams, that red wheelbarrow and the chickens, and I wondered if somebody remembers those exact lines. And it's a short, simple poem, which.
Do you want to hear it?
Yes, I do, and I wanted to get your thoughts on the meaning of that, because somehow or other
Yeah, let's do it together. 1, 2, 3.
So much depends on my red wheelbarrow, glazed with rainwater, beside the white chickens.
That was why we came here today.
Yeah, I just want to say a word about that. This is the problem. That poem was plucked from an enormous, unwieldy, wild, insane, maddening, and interesting long work. And it only actually, and now, which long poem is it?
Spring and All?
Spring and All. And it's not really a poem. It's a screed. It's a mad, sort of meditation on futurism, on war, on everything. So it's sort of I don't know. It sort of riles me a bit that we spend all this time, with this single cell of a poem under the microscope, when in fact it was part of an enormous organism that we have forgotten about. So I would say the best way to understand that poem is to read Spring and All. Yeah, there are a lot of his famous poems.
The crowd at the ball game, which in my talk I talked
That's
about.
right. That's right.
That happens with, there were a lot of Langston Hughes poems, though, and they're really from that long work montage or Dream Deferred. But
Right.
people just know little 8-line snippets.
Right.
And don't get to see the whole
That's right.
montage.
That's right.
Yeah.
But I think that you can do a lot of interesting work with that snippet, however,
Mhm.
about how each stanza revises backwards. First you get the red wheelbarrow, then it becomes glazed with rainwater, so you must revise backward. Then it becomes beside the white chickens with the burst of energy of the white chickens. And I have always thought like the poem was sort of about how poetry is not a painting in some way. I mean, this is my own fantasy perhaps, but you know, if you see a picture of a red wheelbarrow glazed with rainwater beside white chickens, you get all those details at once. So even as Williams is trying to sort of boil down all those details into just this simple image, he's showing you that poetry moves through time and accrues detail and can't ever be a painting. That's just my own interest in that. You know. So you can do that kind of work with those snippets, whether you buy my.
Of course, you could part of that as a project of Spring and All, ways going back and forth between essay, micro essay. I mean, it's a bigger project even in Patterson, but it seems like that kind of feeling of time across the work is what the big book is exploring.
Yeah, but you know, this is the trouble. I mean, this is what we know of him. We know, you know, the red wheelbarrow. And dealing with Spring and All is, you know, like dealing with a hurricane. And I think that Williams should be known also as the writer of enormous, insane, wild, imaginative whirlwinds, and not just known as that author. Because I will admit, I'm absolutely wrong about what I'm going to say something I'm absolutely wrong about, but I think it sentimentalizes him, you know, makes him sentimental. And I think that, you know, and I think it's easier to like those poems than it is to like Spring and All, with which we could have really a ferocious fight, you know.
And I want to say that when a major poet said to me, he's pretty good for a country doctor, I did not punch that person in the face.
When I once heard someone say something about William Carlos with an English teacher, don't be dissing the doc.
That's one of the interesting things is how irritated people have been about that poem for 100 years. That is in itself a virtue to me. That in fact art is made out of irritations. What irritates provokes. I also don't want to let pass the moment to say that there's something kind of beautifully connected with that poem and a poem like Aesop's. That little haiku, that little imagistic thing that undermines the epic tradition, and that undermines, like Daisy was saying, that great big pictorial tradition by looking at a snapshot. That was radical. So I don't want to lose that too, even while most of me agrees with Dorian, or with, who was saying it? With Linda, and the need to remember that little cell embedded in the huge organism of Spring and All.
I think it's something more, in terms of personal things, but I have a feeling everyone here shares it. It somehow has something to do also with how, when you write over a career, and then the idea that you're going to be reduced to 5 poems, or maybe portions of something that you really thought a lot about over the years. And so for me, that's the reason to, if anything, I hope that when we go to anthologies or see a small excerpt, that it provokes us to find the larger thing, as Lynn was saying, or just say, well, these are the 5. I was saying in my workshop today that Robert Hayden is usually represented by about 4 poems, The Winter Sundays, and then 3 poems that are very explicitly African-American history. And I thought that that's what he wrote, basically. And I didn't know he also wrote about Monet's Water Lilies and about Greek epic heroes. And so it's much more a diverse palette that he's working from, and it can be so reductive. That's the problem. It doesn't mean you can't appreciate the small pieces, but I think we all, as living writers, are thinking we want it all to be, it's like one big extended meditation across many poems, and then the idea that just a couple represent us would not be true.
And the culture promotes that, I think.
Right.
I mean, I know that, you know, people read a poem on a website and often that's it. That's their relationship to, say, the person's book. And when we go and sit down to read a book, I know that often, you know, we flip from poem to poem to poem, and we don't take the care of reading the book from the first page to the last page. So our experience with poems comes through Poetry Daily or Poets.org, and that's really important, but I fear that people stop at that. So, oh yes, I've read Lohan Bassalar, because they've read the poem in Poetry Daily, or they've read Stillbirth, the Pantoum, and that's it. That's sort of the autonomy at play. You know, that one poem represents the body of work, the oeuvre, and it's something that we need to remember is to go to the body of work, is to look, because poems often inform other poems.
Especially with Twitter too, because now the big thing on Twitter, of which I'm a huge fan actually, but
You should follow Carl.
But all day, there'll just be, people will say this, and it's a half line from a poem, and they're saying, look, I really like this little piece. And I think we don't even actually have the sentence, or the whole poem. What's good about it is, often there's a link to the whole poem, but still, it's gotten so that people, and I appreciate that people are thrilled by a collection of words, but still, it's uber metonymy.
And I think too that it goes back to this idea of the responsibility of the reader. You know, when you think about anthologies for a minute, right? The poems, cowboy poems anthology, the motherhood anthology, or the anthology of sci-fi. It's dog poems. It's not only to present those individual poems, but it's trying to create a curiosity for readers to say, if you are really liking this one poem, go and take the initiative and go out there and look for the entire body of work, because it's there for the taking.
We have a question right in the middle.
And going back to David here, I'm reminded of Basho's Far Road to a Northern Province, in which you have all of these really wonderful little things going on in the context of this larger story of his journey north. And most people, first of all, it's really sad that the haiku gets the short shrift that it does, because it's so difficult it's a form that's so really difficult to master, and the best ones are like Zen poems. There is no one good way to read it. It's about the transformation of you finding a meaning in it. And that's sort of the other thing that I was hearing through here as well, going back again to David, this idea of struggling with the meaning of a poem, as if there's one right meaning that is transmitted from it. I come from an artistic background, fine art, as a fine artist, but I'm also a writer too. And the thing that occurs to me is that meaning is a process between ourselves struggling with the art object, whether it's a painting or a poem, and that the meaning is transactional between ourselves and this work. The poet may have had his own sense for what he thought this poem meant, but I'm reminded of something one of my professors told me, is that the artist is only the first person to encounter the completed work. And that it seems to me that in a matter regarding meaning, it is that transactional thing, that there is no one meaning to be found in it. It's what it does to us, and the meaning that we get between ourselves and that work.
Thank you. I think,